Eric, my dear friend, thank you for an invitation to be here. I've seen familiar faces in the public. Hello to my friends from the Republic of North Macedonia now. It has been scheduled planned to have a 30 or something minutes of introduction to the topic for today, and after that to have the Q&A session. I will try to shorten that, the first part of my speech, in order to have more time to discuss with you, not only on this topic, if I may, not only on this topic. It's too narrow, especially in this very historic moment. We have many historic moments in the Balkans. So then I'm here, available for your questions eventually you might have on different topics, not only Prespa agreement. We are waiting for the good news from the European Union Council this next week, and there are many options in play, and we can speak about each of them and about the future of the region as well. So I would like to divide my opening speech on the topic in two halves. The first one should be to get a short introduction for all of you not familiar with the topic and say something about the history of this dispute, about the very origins of the dispute, and after that to speak about the key components of the Prespa agreement, which is really atypical agreement as such. So if I'm not quite keen to speak about history at length, but it's necessary. It's really necessary. Some of my advisors advise me to start from the Ottoman times, but I disagree, and I will start from 1991. At that period of the time, in 91, we have declared our independence as the Republic of Macedonia, according to the constitution being adopted in November that year. And immediately that became a problem for our southern neighbor, the Republic of Greece, or Hellenic Republic. Why? Because they think that the very term of Macedonia implies irredentistic claims towards parts of their history, but territory as well. And it's a bit unusual to hear after so many years, but that was true at the time. Bosnia-Herzegovina, in the middle of their conflict, became earlier member of the United Nations than we became member of the same organization. They became the member of the UN in April 1992. We became members of that world organization on 8th of April 1993. Why? Because of this dispute being raised immediately by our neighbor Greece. The resolution which enabled us to become the member of the United Nations was sponsored by 3 countries, but in essence, the British and US diplomacy was behind that undertaking. And according to some witnesses of history, the very name, very cumbersome, but very unusual, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, was the British product as well. I can stop here on that point. In 1995, we have signed the only one agreement we have had with Greece for 25 years. The so-called Interim Accord was signed in New York, and that was the only legal framework between the two countries, believe it or not, in the period after that, since 1995, up to the Prespa agreement, we haven't signed any single document with the Hellenic Republic. Not even about immigrants going through their territory, through our territory, through the Balkan route, to the Western European countries. Why? Because they wouldn't like on the same paper to see the name the Republic of Macedonia being in use according to our current constitution at the time. And of course, we wouldn't like to see on the same piece of paper the name, the phrase, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, as we have been recognized internationally. What was the problem? With the Interim Accord, we have accepted this FYROM, or the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, to be applied only in the international fora, only in the international institutions, not within our legal system. And what is important to say, in order to appease Greek side in the early 1990s, we have amended our constitution barely 2.5 months after our first post-communist constitution was adopted. In January 1993, we have adopted 2 new articles to our constitution saying that we do not have, in short, we do not have territorial aspirations or pretensions towards the Greek territory. With this interim accord I have mentioned, we have changed that's the unique case in world history, correct me if I'm wrong, we have changed our flag. Why? Because we have at that period of the time flag with 16 rays, sun with 16 rays, and the Greeks said that that's part of their historical legacy, allegedly, and today's flag from that period of time, in essence, for a quarter of a century almost, our current flag is with 8 rays, sun with 8 rays. So this has been a compromises we have made in the early 1990s, and obviously when we started to think about entering into the European Union and NATO, when we have been nearing that formal status of a candidate countries, which should start negotiations, Greece has imposed additional preconditions for our approachment towards these two international organizations. For the first decade of our independence, it's important that we started to negotiate in 1995, but in essence there was no negotiations at all. I mean no meaningful negotiations, because the key negotiators from both sides then have been meeting each other, having coffee, asking about the weather and about the next plane to go back home, and that was all. There were 2 short exceptions of this rule in the first 10, 11 years of our independence. In the early 1990s, there was one Austrian being involved in the negotiations behind the scenes with one of our highest functionaries at the time, and depending on who you are speaking with from that period of time, Austria is not alive, but functionaries on the Macedonian side are still pretty much alive. Then all of them are mentioning different names being put on the table. One of the sources on the Austrian side tell me that the name for the state eventually on the table was the Central Balkan Republic, then without having the term of Macedonia within that compound name. And Macedonian sources, some of them still alive, I met one of them recently in my office, tell me that allegedly the name on the table was the Republic of Macedonia / Skopje, the capital. But regardless of that attempt, unsuccessful, attempt failed, both sides agree that a huge financial arrangements have been behind these proposals. Some people are mentioning the sums between 3 and 4 billion US dollars at the time, but it failed, period. In 2001, there was one quick attempt at the very verge of our internal crisis. In January 2001 was another attempt made by then government in Skopje to approach our Greek counterpart, and then Foreign Minister of Macedonia at that time approached the Foreign Minister of Greece and attempted to resolve the issue. That failed because of many reasons, but mostly because our internal conflict started to develop, started to unfold, and there was no political climate within the country at all to enter the meaningful negotiations. I'm not quite sure how all of that might end, but certainly it was shortened, it was cut off immediately, maybe after a month and a half, something. So this has been only 2 serious attempts, I would say, or at least attempts, to resolve the issue in the first 10 years of our independence. In 2001, I would like to mention one very specific sentence being used publicly by the then former Greek Foreign Minister Antonis Samaras. We have been in a very bad situation from February, March up to August, September that year. We have been on the very verge of a bigger war, and Mr. Samaras was asked by some of the journalists in Greece, what do you think about the future of this dispute? Are there any chances that to be resolved? Said Samaras, who was one of the creators of the so-called Macedonian problem about the name in the early 1990s, responded, we should wait. I do not think that we should enter into any negotiations because we should just wait for a while. It seems to me that the country are not going to exist for a very short period of time, so we are not going to have the counterpart to negotiate with. We have survived that internal problems and started to approach the NATO alliances first with a quick pace, and we have initiated in 2002 at the margins of the NATO summit in Prague, Czech Republic, the so-called Adriatic group of countries. An Adriatic Charter was signed in 2003, in May. Foreign ministers from 3 countries, Albania, Croatia, and Macedonia at the time, and Colin Powell as a kind of a power broker behind that on paper. And we started really faster, on a faster pace to approach the NATO integration. And in 2005, when the Greek side saw the course of developments, that the Republic of Macedonia, or Fyrom, in that period of the time, was approaching eventually to become a serious candidate to enter the NATO alliance, they have put through the back diplomatic channels this proposal. The Republic of Macedonia not to enter the NATO alliance if before that the name dispute is not resolved. That, according to some of the historical sources and historical books being recently published, that proposal was rejected out of hand by the US State Department, and especially by Pentagon, because they think at that period of the time, NATO is a security organization the most, and we shouldn't get into any kind of an experiment, and in the heartland of the Balkans, speak about that. Let's negotiate, and after that, maybe one point in future, then that country is going to be accepted into the alliance. Said you can negotiate with that country for the EU accession, but certainly not for NATO. And what happened in 2006? We have seen the change of the government in Skopje in 2000, from 2006 to 2009. Government led by Mr. Gruevski was beyond doubt pro-Atlantic and pro-European oriented. But in 2008, one very important event for us happened. At the NATO Bucharest summit in 2008 in April, we have been rejected. Our membership bid was rejected only because of the Greek informal veto. Formally, that was the decision of the alliance, but Greek side has lodged serious complaints about entering into the alliance. And from that period on, the current government in Skopje have completely changed the foreign policy course. Said maybe double integrative agenda is not, shouldn't be the high priority for the country. Internally, they started with even more peculiar undertaking. They started to build a project named Skopje 2014, which in essence has tried to change the very genesis of the Macedonian people, the very identity of the Macedonian state and the people. And they started to build the buildings, monuments, and started to change the historical textbooks, saying that we are the direct descendants of Alexander the Great. That was the worst possible political mistake one politician in Skopje can make because the Greek resistance became even bigger. And from in 2008, then government in Skopje decided to sue Greece in front of the International Court of Justice. Why? For breaking clearly, unequivocally, Article number 11 from the interim accord I have mentioned at the beginning from 1995. What does that mean? Article 11 from that interim accord said, my country at that period of time, referred to as the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, should enter all international organizations under this acronym, eventually if the problem is solved with the new name, but if the problem is not solved, with this Fyrom acronym or reference. And Greece has not the legal right to dispute our right to enter each of the international organizations unless we are changing our will and saying, okay, we would like to enter as the Republic of Macedonia, as was our constitutional name for the whole period of time. We said we would like to enter NATO with Fyrom, with the former Yugoslav Republic. Mainly because, that's my estimation, mainly because of Project Skopje 2014, Greece said, you are not going to enter NATO even under the acronym and that reference, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. And from that period on, from 2008 to 2011, we have been embroiled in a dispute in front of the International Court of Justice. We won by 15-0. All judges in the International Court of Justice said it's a clear breach of the agreement from 1995, but that was a clear legal victory for us and a clear political defeat for us as well, because said, thank you, bye-bye, we are not interested in that. Secretary General of NATO immediately, the very same day, said, we are a political organization, we have political criteria and specific procedures for accepting new members. One of the main principles is full consensus, not consensus -1, -2. So we are not interested what the International Court of Justice has to say. What happened next? Internally, we have entered into clear tendencies to build an authoritarian regime. Not having a clear European perspective, and because of many other domestic reasons and motives, of course, on the part of the people being in power at that time, we started to build a clear, by-the-book authoritarian regime, and all of that was cut off with the famous colorful revolution 2015 and 16 of the people's resistance on the streets, and well before that, then oppositional leader, the current prime minister of the country, Zoran Zaev, was on 40 press conferences simply discovering all the illegal activities being undertaken by the then government, exposing the illegally taped conversations of the then opposition, of the media people, of the NGO community, of the business community people, and so on and so forth. Then more than 20,000 people have been illegally taped at that period of the time. That was exposed, a part of that, of course, exposed on the press conferences, and that was the beginning of the end of that regime. 2016, we have the parliamentary elections. Mr. Zaev succeeded in forming the parliamentary majority. In April, I have to mention that outside of the dispute, in 2017, in April, we have the unprecedented incident. Never ever in the modern European history happened. Then the party in power, which was not willing to transfer the power to the new electoral victors, then to organize the people on the streets and with them together and with parts of the security system, with the policemen and part of the army, to enter the parliamentary building. The angry mob, including the then people from the then ruling party, stormed the parliamentary building and started to beat people inside. Personnel in the parliament, parliamentarians, I was at that period of time parliamentarian as well. So, but that was really the last straw which broke the camel's back. After that, the whole international community said, you cannot rule anymore in such a way. New government of Mr. Zaev was installed in May, June, I think in 2017, and started with a completely new policy towards the direct neighbors. We have signed with Bulgaria bilateral agreement on good neighbor relations on 1st of August 2017, and the year after that, we have signed the Prespa agreement with the Greeks. What was unusual and what is atypical in all of this relationship between us and the other side? From the very beginning, there was a clear asymmetry in the resources on both sides. Greece is much bigger, much more influential country internationally, with a much more mightier diaspora than we have. Greece has used all of that leverage, being the member of all international organizations, while in the same time we are trying to enter all of these organizations. They have been in, we have been out, and that was certainly an asymmetry of the first scale, which cannot be overcome by our side, even today, when we are still trying to enter the NATO and European Union and become full-fledged member. After that, we can say that we are really equal, sitting on the same table and having one vote for each voting procedure. So the agreement is atypical because of its very content. The biggest concern on our side was whether the complex of the Macedonian identity should be preserved. And that was the must for all of our negotiators, because you cannot say to the people, we are going to enter European Union, NATO, as nameless people. We are what we are. I'm an ethnic Macedonian. We are saying that we have to have the right to say that we are ethnic Macedonians. At the same time, that's probably not known to many of you, although some of you are coming from the region. In northern part of today's Greece, there are people who said we are Macedonians as well. There are people in some parts of western parts of Bulgaria today who said we are Macedonians as well. And we would like to have the right to name ourselves as Macedonians. Very specific Article 7 is resolving that dispute in a very unusual way, saying that we have the right to call ourselves Macedonians, and the people living in northern Greece as well have that right to call themselves Macedonians. It said, if you are Macedonian, you have the right to call yourself Macedonian. So that is not set in the agreement. That's a very peculiar situation, but it's correct. In a sense, we are Macedonians. They are Greek Macedonians. Anyway, the dispute was resolved with giving to each person who want to do that, to declare himself, herself, as they feel. Apart from that, we stipulated in the agreement, we agree in the agreement, my side, my government, said that we have nothing to do with the Hellenic history, tradition, and civilization. Meaning that these stories about Skopje 2014, Alexander the Great, Philip II, and many other things are not in the core of our nation. So that was said clearly. That was said publicly in the 1995 by the then President Gligorov when he was on the visit to our diaspora in Canada. But it was never put on paper, never put in the accord. What we get, why we have signed that agreement and changed our name in the internal legal order as well, which was never before the case. In all the negotiations with Greece, we have never agreed to change our name inside our borders, because we said we are FYROM outside of our borders. Whenever there is the FYROM, let's put the new name. But we have agreed on a bigger compromise. Why? Because in the agreement, for the first time in our history, we got an international recognition of who we are. So, as I said already, for ethnic Macedonians, the citizenship was described as Macedonian / because we have people in North Macedonia, other people than ethnic Macedonians living in the country, like Albanians, Serbs, others, they could be citizens of North Macedonia, but we have in our passports, new passports, Macedonian citizenship. We have preserved with that accord the cornerstone of our identity, the language. It's said Macedonian language. There is a footnote down there saying as part of South Slavic linguistic group, but which is a linguistic fact, that was put in the accord, and all of that, and the international code of my country is MK and MKD. All of that was ratified in the Greek parliament, and all the credentials, all the good words, all the praise should go to then Prime Minister Tsipras and the people around him who have been courageous enough to got 153 votes for ratification of that agreement in the Greek parliament with a very tiny majority. But anyhow, and they have endured a big resistance to that agreement within their country. Otherwise, it was not possible. And so if you ask me how it was possible, one dispute of 25 years with a very specific content from the very beginning to be resolved, I would say not that the atmosphere in the countries have changed a lot, but completely new generation of politicians came to power in Skopje and in Athens. People in power, led by Zoran Zaev and led in Athens by Alexis Tsipras, have not been overburdened by history, not by negative emotions. They have not been thinking about the past. They have been fighting for their national interest, of course, to the fullest. They have been thinking about the future and only about the future. We can say we are going to fight for the 19th century history. 30 years. You know what? For 10 years from now, we'll not have any youngsters in our country still living there. In 2011, we have not executed a census, which was planned. 40 million euros have been dedicated to that goal. Why? Because politicians then in power, when they saw the very last day of the census, the real numbers of all people living in Macedonia, I'm not speaking Albanians, Macedonians, everybody, and they have been 1.7 million people at that moment, which is 350,000 less than in the former Yugoslav times. They said cut off. We cannot say that the propaganda was like that we are the biggest reformers in the world. And all of a sudden, the biggest reformers are not doing reforms enough for young people to stay there and to prosper. And we have scheduled the census for next year, for April, to see how many people are still in the country, living still in the country. I can tell you, according to some estimations, we might be next year even less than being counted in 2011. The whole region is emptying, the people are leaving, and if you still speak as responsible politicians about history instead about the future, then you are in the wrong place and in the wrong time, and you are not doing good to the national interests of your state. If I miss something, I'm here to respond to each question you might have. Thank you.